Dr. Pam Spurr, friend of the channel, friend in general, actually. Dr. Pam, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm sorry to join you, though, talking about such a disturbing topic.
No, look, of course. And look, you got in touch with us yesterday, and rightly so, and we're glad that you did, because I think you can explain something to our viewers and listeners, and to me as well, frankly. What is the psychology of a mass shooter?
Well, I think the first thing people wonder about, are these people suffering a severe mental illness? And actually, when you look at the research, the differences between a serial killer and a mass shooter can be distinguished in this way, because serial killers like Peter Sutcliffe, who was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, often get these serious psychiatric diagnoses. But mass shooters are more likely to have what now is talked about as PED, or persistent emotional disturbance. That means they have persistent traumas in their lives, there's chaos, they fall out with people, they lose jobs, and this kind of underlies a number of other factors going on that create a pattern in mass shooters.
I do have to ask, though, we're told we're more aware of mental health, aren't we, just generally as a society, well, in the West anyway, and the prevalence of mental illnesses seems to be getting higher and higher, and yet these individuals, luckily, thank God, are very rare. So what is it specifically that tips these kids, essentially, he was only 18, what would tip him into doing something so unthinkable to the overwhelming majority of people?
Well, the other factors include things like early trauma. So most mass shooters have maybe been abandoned by parents, they've been abused, they might have been sexually abused. This leads to that PED, that persistent emotional disturbance, where they always have problems. These problems then isolate them from having good relationships. They don't really know how to have good relationships. And they say, like with Salvador Ramos, this evil mass shooter in Texas, he didn't have any friends. And that is classic with these mass shooters. Another factor is often they find it hard to keep a job, or they've recently lost a job. They have a propensity to watch violent content, so it may be violent films, violent video games. They also tend to research other mass shooters. So they're fascinated by this sort of power and control they think other mass shooters have. A number of mass shooters also have what is called sort of narcissistic grievances, whereas most of us, if we fall out with a friend or lose a job, we can at least partly look at our own behavior and say, well, I kind of deserved that. I wasn't the best employee. Whereas a mass shooter often has this narcissistic grievance where they think they've not been given the special treatment they deserve. They think they've been treated very badly. So that's why often you see these mass shootings happen after someone has lost a job, because it pierces their narcissistic self-belief.
Yeah.
So and you have the suicidal tendency. So many of them have suicidal tendencies, have threatened suicide, and so they don't have the fear of being shot by the police.
Well,